All right, sorry I cut off that last video. Here's the end of it. So I actually want you to go ahead and plug that function into your calculator. I want you to get a good window. So notice the window that I put. From 8 to 12, I only care about that window because they started processing entries at t equals 8 and they stopped processing entries at t equals 12. And then for y min and y max, I had it way too big at first and then I could see way too much. So I wanted to zoom in a lot so I could see a better picture of the graph. And here's what it looks like when you do. So here's what you need to realize. They're asking when, how can I put this? When is the most number of entries being processed? Okay, so in order to calculate the most number of entries being processed, obviously to you and obviously to me, hopefully, we can both look at this and realize that the most number of entries being processed, since the units on this graph are number of entries processed per hour, it would just be the highest point between 0 and 12. So obviously to me, the highest point is right here. So that's going to be at 12. Now, on the AP test, you can't just use your calculator to figure out the answer for you and then assume that the grader knows that you know what you're doing. So it's not like you can just put that the time is 12 and then figure out, by tracing it to 12, that it would be 800 entries per hour. You can't do that. They won't give you the proper credit for it. So you can use your calculator to verify that, all right? You can use your calculator to see, oh yeah, at 12, that's obviously the highest number of entries because that point is a lot higher than this one over here. However, you cannot, like I just said, you cannot use your calculator to do that for you. You actually have to show the setup and show the work for that. So in order to do so, we have to come back over here and realize, oops, I don't have a very good picture of it, but you need to realize down here that we're finding the maximum of P of t, okay, which happens to be at 12, and again, it's the highest point, or sorry, this should say 12,8, not, at t equals 12 because this is the highest point in the interval from 8 to 12. However, in order to show the work for it, you need to find all of the points that it could be. So you need to realize that P prime of t, taking the derivative of P of t, would be 3t squared minus 60t plus 298 equals 0. That's showing that you know how to find the derivative, which would give you the critical points. Then actually finding the critical points, and you can use your calculator to do that, you would just find the points that make this equal 0, which you could use your calculator to find the zeros. And these are the two possible critical points. But to find the maximum value, you also have to test endpoints. Whenever they want the absolute maximum, not just a relative maximum, you need to test the endpoints as well. So that's why we also have to test 8 and 12. And then again, when you get those and you actually come back over here again, you'll realize that if you try all those values, so let's say that you try 8. Obviously 8 is 0, that's too small. Then if you try this maximum value, I forget what I said it was, 9.184. So if you trace 9.184, that puts you here at 5, which is great, but obviously this point's still higher. And then if you trace this next point over here, which is, what was that point? 10.816. If you trace 10.816, again, that went down low again, so that wasn't a good one. And then you test the other endpoint of 12, and you get that was the highest point of 8. So that's what you need to show the grader, is that you know that you need to test the critical points, and you know you need to test the endpoints. So if you can show the grader that you tested the 2 critical points, and you tested the 2 endpoints, and found that this was the highest point, that's how you're going to get the maximum amount of points from this problem. So again, if we come back over here to the grading, notice here's what they put. They got 3 points for this problem. Number 1 for considering P prime of t. So you don't even have to find the derivative. You can just put P prime of t equals 0. And if you just write that, then you get a point for that. Okay. Then identifying all the candidates, that it could be the endpoints, 8 and 12, and it could be the 2 critical points that we came up with as well. Those are also worth a point. And then the answer, that entries are being processed most quickly at time t equals 12. And this is your justification. All right, this table is your justification, is how you get all 3 points from this problem. So again, a nice note to heed, or a nice note to listen to, is that whenever you can use a calculator to solve a problem, make sure that you write something down that justifies what you're doing on your calculator, or that explains what you're doing on your calculator, so that the reader can understand. So you can't just look at it and automatically assume that you know what it is just by verification by looking at it. You actually have to show, I know that the derivative equals 0 at these 2 points, which means that these could be maximums, so I have to test those to be maximums. I also know that the maximums could be at the endpoint, so let me test all these points and show that this is the highest, which means that 12 has to be the answer. So again, you have to use that to verify your answer and to justify your answer, or else you will not get all the points.